Okay. Um, I think we will get started to respect everyone's time. We still have attendees joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So, I just wanted to say welcome from beautiful and sunny Albany, New York. And I see some familiar names on the attendee list, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephanie Galvin Riley, and I am the director of the New York State Home Program. So thanks for joining us today for the presentation, which will be geared towards new users. And this will cover everything you need to know about the single family side of the New York State Home Program. So today's agenda will generally cover a program overview, eligible applicants, the 4 eligible activities that we provide, project examples, overview of how we handle the budget and reimbursement process, and even how to plan for a successful application, which we have coming up, which we'll talk about in the presentation as well. So this is not for large scale development rental projects. That's not going to be included with this presentation. Those are facilitated by our HCR Finance and Development through their biannual funding rounds. So this is more towards, like I said, the single family program side. So to start off, I wanted to introduce and also give a big thank you to Marjorie McAllister, the Assistant Director of the Home Program. Marge, you can give a little wave. And also, we have Sarah Bramer, Senior Program Manager, and Courtney Burke, also Program Manager, who all prepared the presentation and are also going to do most of the work today as well. So I take no credit for all of this. Um, Also on, but without camera, they're on as attendees. We also have the remainder of our illustrious home team, Alex Smith, who is the Manager of Home Finance and Compliance, and Leland Barup and Tom Weinheimer, also program managers. So our team's role is to assist grantees with home contracts by providing the guidance and technical assistance throughout the term of the contract to ensure successful administration of the programs, which we'll get into a little bit in the presentation. Just note that this PowerPoint is going to be distributed after the presentation today. And because we have such a large group in attendance, we have about 125 people right now. Um, just so that we can get through all the materials, we ask that you please enter any questions you have in the Q&A section. Marjorie will be monitoring that and will get to as many as possible after the presentation or during the presentation, if we can. And you can find the Q&A at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen or by clicking on those 3 dots and selecting Q&A. So please don't put them in the chat. Let's use the Q&A. It's easier for us to track and answer. So with that, I will hand it over to Sarah. Thank you. Next slide, Court.
Hi, everyone. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm Sarah Bramer, a Senior Program Manager with the Home Team. I'll be going over the first half of the presentation before turning it over to my colleague, Courtney. We'll start with an overview of the various entities involved in the administration of the Home Program and how the funds flow. For those of you that don't know, HOME is a federally funded HUD program, and HOME funds are federal HUD funds. There are both federal and state regulations that apply to this program, but don't let that deter you from applying. New York State is a HUD-designated participating jurisdiction, and Housing and Community Renewal, HCR, receives an annual allocation of HOME funds. HCR then awards the funds to the local program administrators, who are you all in attendance, through a competitive funding round. The LPA uses these funds to serve the end user, the homeowner, homebuyer, or tenant. Individuals are not eligible to apply directly to New York State Homes and Community Renewal for home funds. They would access the funds through an LPA in their community. Next slide, please. Now getting a bit more into the program, the purpose of the HOME program is to expand the supply of decent, safe, and affordable housing across the state for low-income individuals or households. This is done by providing assistance for acquiring or purchasing of single-family units, rehabilitation of single-family units, direct rental assistance to households, and manufactured home replacement. These are also the 4 home activities we will cover, and we will cover them in more detail later in the presentation. While we are planning to offer a single-family homebuyer development program in the near future, that activity is not currently available. HUD defines a single-family unit as a 1 to 4 unit residence, which is a bit confusing. So to clarify, this means your program would be focusing on single-family homes owned and lived in by one family. If an LPA is interested in including rental units, meaning 2 or more families in one dwelling, with their home program, they must receive approval prior to applying by demonstrating superior knowledge of home rental requirements. You can submit inquiries to the home program mailbox for additional information. Next slide, please. Some other key points of the home program: it is a reimbursement program. LPAs incur the cost or front the money and then submit for reimbursement for eligible costs. LPAs can use their own funds, take out a line of credit, or apply for a revolving loan fund from a CDCFI, and accrued interest is an eligible reimbursable home expense. Home funds can only be used to assist low-income individuals or households. This means households making less than 80% AMI, or if you're providing rental assistance, the household must be less than 60%. Home funds are subject to Federal Regulation 24 CFR Part 92, which sets forth the requirements for a home. Next slide, please. So, who can apply for home funds? We award home funds to units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and public housing authorities to all areas across New York State. And again, those organizations that receive the funds are known as LPAs. To ensure an LPA will be able to successfully administer a home award, they must have at least 1 year of providing housing services in the proposed service area prior to applying, demonstrate local market need for their proposed home activity or program, and this need should drive which activity you apply for. The LPA must also demonstrate organizational capacity to expend the requested amount of home funds within the contract term, and this would be based on your staffing and knowledge of the home program. Also, the LPA must ensure projects will be in compliance with state and federal regulations. Applicants need to demonstrate a basic understanding of the regulations at the time of applying. You can review the administrative plans and funding materials on the home website. We know home has a reputation for being a heavily regulated program. While we are unable to change the regulations, the home staff have increased the amount of assistance we provide to the LPAs through our more hands-on approach and involvement in your programs. We are here to assist you and to help you successfully administer your home program. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are going to have a poll question we're going to put up. The question is, does your service area currently receive New York State home funds? While I'm going through the slide, you can answer the poll and then we'll review it at the end. One moment while I take a drink. While we strive to fund all areas of the state, there are some areas that currently have no New York State home funds. Areas listed with an asterisk next to them are participating jurisdictions and receive home funds directly from HUD, but these areas do not currently receive home funding from New York State. PJs are still eligible for New York State home funds in addition to their HUD allocation and should leverage the other home funds in the application process. If you serve one of these counties or areas, we strongly encourage you to apply for home funds in the next funding round. Okay, so now we're going to close the poll and see what the answers are. So, does your service area receive home funds? It looks like, I have to make this bigger. Most people that responded said yes, so that's good. If you don't know, basically if you're on this list, you don't receive New York State home funds. Next slide, please. Okay. As I mentioned previously, the home staff have made a lot of changes in the past few years, and we are now much more engaged with our LPAs and able to provide a higher level of support. Once an LPA is awarded home funds, they are assigned a program manager who will take a hands-on approach and provide assistance every step of the way as you administer your program. We are all a team working together to get the home funds out to the people that need them in your communities. Program managers oversee the daily administration of your program by reviewing setups and completions, reviewing disbursements, conducting monitoring, having monthly check-in calls where we review your milestones in activity progress, and providing technical assistance and guidance. We have strived to improve the program manager-LPA relationship. There is a lot more contact and communication between the LPAs and program managers, and it's had a positive impact on both sides. Program managers have a greater sense of involvement with our LPA contracts, and LPAs feel more comfortable reaching out to program managers with questions or concerns. Next slide, please. Now we're going to touch on everyone's favorite topic, compliance. This is just a big picture of unit compliance to help you understand the basics. The home program does have a lot of federal regulations which the state cannot alter, but we want to stress again that your program manager will be helping you navigate them and ensure compliance. So the first P stands for people, and again, individuals have to income qualify to receive home funds. HUD defines these limits, and for most of the activities, it's 80% AMI. However, if you're providing rental assistance, then the household must be 60% or less. Do your research prior to your program design and application. You should have an understanding of your service area's AMI figures and how that will impact your program design. The next one is price, and that's referring to the max sale price after rehab value or rent limits. Units assisted with home funds cannot exceed these limits. HUD sets these limits annually for every county. You should know the max price for your service area before applying. The third one is property, and that's touching on, is the unit eligible and is it appropriate to invest home funds into the unit? You need to understand your community's housing stock. All units must meet property standards to ensure decent and sustainable housing, and all units must meet applicable state and local code at completion. The last one is referring to the period of affordability. To ensure that home investments yield affordable housing over the long term, home imposes occupancy requirements over the length of the affordability period. This ranges from 5 to 15 years, and the period depends on the activity funded and the amount of home investment in the property. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the 4 home program activities we currently offer. As a reminder, you must receive approval prior to applying if your program intends to include rental units. You should be thinking about, what does your community need? When applying, you will have to clearly identify the needs of your community and explain how the activity you are applying for will meet the needs of your community. Housing, rehab, and homebuyer down payment assistance are the activities most LPAs apply for, making up about 70% of our open contracts. If you're considering down payment assistance, we strongly encourage you to include funds for rehabilitation. Manufactured home replacement, we've increased the assistance amounts due to the increased cost, and this activity is becoming more popular, especially in rural areas. TBRA is our least subscribed to activity. It provides monthly rental assistance for households at or below 60% AMI. Again, you should be applying for the activity that will best serve your community. Now we will review more specifics of each activity and some examples. The first activity we will review is homeowner housing rehabilitation. This is for moderate rehab, not total gut jobs. Think of your community's housing stock. Is this program appropriate based on the condition of the housing stock? Again, it's for single-family units, including rental requires approval prior to applying. The home-assisted unit must meet code and home property standards at completion, and the max per unit cap is $65,000. Don't be shy to use the full amount if that's what's needed to make the unit safe and provide quality, affordable housing. LPAs must take a comprehensive whole house approach and not just address standalone issues. Applications are not scored based on the number of units or the cost per unit, but the ability to complete the program. Next slide, please. Some additional things to consider for home rehab. Rehab units require a 5-year period of affordability, regardless of the amount of home funds invested. This means the homeowner must occupy the unit as their primary residence during those 5 years. HUD after rehab value limits apply. This is the estimated value of the property after rehabilitation, and it cannot exceed the home maximum sales price limits. These are published annually, and again, you should know what these are for your service area before applying. Lead-based paint compliance. I'm not going to get into detail in this presentation, just want you to know that units must comply with the HUD rules cited on the screen. Once awarded, your program manager will be able to assist you with this, but you need to know the basics. You need to know the basic understanding of the regulations to apply and properly design your program. Think of your community, the condition of the housing stock, availability of contractors. Is rehab a feasible activity? We've been seeing some groups, like I said, changing from rehab to manufactured home replacement. Next slide, please. Okay, it's one thing to hear about the basics of the home program, but it's another to see the impact the program can have in your community. Here is a typical example of what home funds are used for and the impact it can have. This is a senior's home in the Capital District that, as you can see, suffered from deferred maintenance. The owner accessed home funds through his local program administrator to replace and fix the windows, the siding, deteriorated steps, and inoperable doors. By investing home funds into this unit, the LPA was able to bring the house up to code and address all health and safety issues, enabling the homeowner to remain in his home. Think of your community needs. Are there lots of homes in similar condition to this example? If so, think of the impact a home rehab program could have. Next slide. Okay, here's another example of a rehab project from Wayne County. The owner was a disabled senior, and the home needed extensive repairs that he could not afford. The LPA combined home funds with AHC and Restore. The total funding that went in was $48,500. The rehab provided new electric service, flooring and windows, a rehabbed bathroom, new siding, and repaired the foundation. After addressing these much-needed repairs, the owner was able to remain safe and comfortable in his own home, for which he was truly grateful. Again, I encourage you to think about the impact this program could have in your community and for your residents. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Courtney, and she will end out the presentation. Courtney?
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, my name is Courtney Burke. I am one of the program managers here with the home team. I will be going over the second half of the webinar with you. So our next activity is manufactured housing replacement. For this activity, the unit must be owned and in disrepair in order to replace it. We don't allow for the rehabilitation of manufactured homes, only replacement. If you are planning to apply for our home MHR program, we strongly encourage you to also apply for the State Mobile and Manufactured Home Replacement Program, also known as MMHR. Since this program is capped at $100,000 per unit, it does need to be combined with other funds to cover the costs. Speaking of which, we have increased our per unit subsidy limit for this activity to account for those increased costs, such as the purchase of the unit and the required site work. So the new limit is $140,000 per unit. And as Sarah mentioned before, this is becoming a more popular home activity, especially in rural areas. Here's some additional things to consider when applying for home MHR. These units have a 10-year period of affordability, regardless of the amount of home funds invested. So this means the homeowner must occupy the unit as their primary residence for 10 years. Previously, we focused on units that were located on privately owned land. However, we can now replace units in co-ops as well as parks. There are different security instrument requirements for each type of site, so be sure you can comply with the period of affordability and the lien requirements. It's important to note if you intend to replace 2 or more units in the same park, there are environmental specific requirements, including undergoing a NEPA review due to the proximity of the units. This can take an additional few months, as it includes publishing a public notice, a public comment period, and a HUD decision. So here's an example of MHR in Yates County. This was a single parent with 2 kids at 30% of the area median income. The original unit had numerous holes in the floors, leaking roof, and wasn't on a permanent foundation. Fortunately, the owner was unable to address these health and safety issues or purchase a new unit on their own. Their local program administrator leveraged $22,000 in AHC funds with home funds and was able to provide the family a brand new unit on a permanent foundation. So in total, $130,000 were invested into this property. Here is another example, this time in Wayne County. The original unit was from 1971 and the owner was 75 years old. The roof was leaking so bad, there was a tarp installed inside the unit under the living room ceiling to catch the rain and melting snow, which drained into a 30-gallon garbage can that had to be emptied throughout the day and night. The well was also no longer functioning, and the owner had been hauling water from neighbors and family. So for this project, the LB combined $100,000 with the state MMHR program and $46,000 in home funds to replace the unit and provide a new well. Our third activity is home buyer down payment assistance with or without rehab. It's important to note that CDBG is no longer offering this activity. This activity can help pay for down payment and or closing costs for low-income home buyers for new or existing single-family homes, condos, or co-ops. Unfortunately, you can't use down payment funds to purchase a manufactured housing unit. Again, if you are considering down payment assistance, we strongly encourage you to include funds for rehab, depending on your housing stock in your service area. Here's some additional things to consider for home down payment. You want to consider your local market conditions. This has been a difficult program to run in certain counties and areas of the state due to the COVID housing market fluctuations and their effects. You want to know the HUD max purchase price for your service area. To be an eligible unit, the purchase price cannot exceed the HUD limit. Also think about the ability of the home to meet code and address lead-based paint issues before closing. Last, the period of affordability ranges from 5 to 15 years depending on the amount of home funds invested. These are some additional things to consider if you're going to include rehab with your down payment application. When you're applying, you must indicate on your application that you are going to include rehab. And all rehab requirements must be followed for any rehab that is over $5,000. You can also apply for down payment with rehab and use home funds for the rehab or another source of funding. Either way, whether you're using home funds or another source, the rehab must be completed within 6 months and meet New York State and local code. So here we have an example for down payment in Onondaga County. This family was assisted with low income and a family of 6. The borrower was in need of financial assistance to be able to purchase the home, and that would fit their family needs. So with $30,000 of home funds supplementing the down payment and closing costs, they were able to successfully purchase and close on the property, and now is in a safe and comfortable home, building equity to improve their financial situation. Our fourth and final home activity we offer is tenant-based rental assistance, or TBRA. This is our least subscribed activity, and generally the LPA uses this program to provide rental assistance to households on the Section 8 waiting list. Households must be at or below 60% of the area median income, unlike other activities where they're at or below 80% AMI. You can provide assistance in the form of an ongoing monthly subsidy along with a security deposit and or utility assistance. But you can also provide assistance in the form of a one-time payment of a security deposit and or a one-time payment for rent. So in other words, you wouldn't have to provide ongoing rental assistance to be able to do a one-time payment. All right, so we do have another poll for you. I'm going to open that up and you can answer that while I'm going through this slide. This poll is asking if your service area, or I'm sorry, which home activity you might be interested in applying for. So here's some additional things to consider for TBRA. You want to do your research for your service area and ensure the need for the program. Find out how many people are on the Section 8 waiting list, and on average, how long are they on the waiting list. You want to determine the availability of rental units and if they're going to meet HQS standards. And last, you want to figure out if landlords and owners are going to be willing to sign the required documentation for this activity. All rental activities are eligible, not just apartments, but manufactured homes as well, as long as the tenant is not recognized as the owner under New York State law and the property meets property standards, it is eligible. It's important to note that TBRA moves with the tenant. So if the household receiving the assistance no longer wishes to rent that particular unit, they're allowed to take their assistance and move to another rental property. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. It looks like there's a decent amount of people interested in homeowner rehab, which is to be expected, and then a few other for some other activities. So it's great. Thank you. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So now that we provided an overview of the 4 home activities, we're going to briefly review some budget items. The contract term is now 2.5 years as opposed to 2 years, which we previously offered. It's important to think about the amount of funding your organization is able to expend. If you haven't administered a home program in a few years or ever before, it's best to apply for a smaller amount of home funds while you get acquainted with the program. You don't have to apply for the max amount either. this doesn't get you any more points on your application. You are expected to spend the full award by the end of the contract term, so it's important to think about the capacity of your organization because we do consider your capacity to expend the full award when we're scoring applications. Again, it's better to request a smaller amount that you can successfully expend in full in the contract term and then come back for more funding in the future. These are our main budget categories, and I'm going to briefly review each category with you. The first category is project costs. These are the hard costs pertaining to the specific activity. For example, the down payment assistance, the cost of construction, the cost to purchase a mobile home unit and install it, and then the cost of rental assistance. The next is soft costs. These include costs related to implementing the activity. For example, the cost of inspections, environmental reviews, appraisals, and so forth. Third is project delivery. This includes staff costs and hours related to carrying out a specific project. Project delivery is capped at 13% of the total award. Keep in mind that the subsidy limit for each activity includes project hard costs, soft costs, and includes hard costs, soft costs, and project delivery. And then last is administrative costs. This category includes direct costs related to the general administration of the program, so it's not tied to a specific project. Costs include staff hours, consultant fees, audits, marketing, and so forth. And admin is capped at 5% of the total award. Don't be shy to include the full 13 or 5% amount for these categories when applying. You don't lose points for requesting the full amount. And last, be sure to refer to our budget policy and the activity budget worksheets on our website when you're creating the program budget. Okay, so now that we've gone over the home program activities and provided a brief budget overview, we have some helpful tips for planning for a successful application. Our next funding round opens in July, so now is a good time to figure out if there's a home activity that is needed in your community and start designing your program. Take the time to read and understand the application materials, such as the NOFA RFP and the application instructions. Plan enough time to complete the application and ask for help once you have reviewed the materials. These are tools to help you successfully apply and administer your program. You can also sign up to attend our application webinar on July 27th. The link is going to be posted on our home website. The application instructions go through the application step by step. So even if you have applied before, don't assume that you know how to apply for the application this next round. Applications are submitted through online through the Community Development Online Application System, also known as CDOL. You must be registered with CDOL to apply. Registration forms can be found on HCR's website. And again, we're going to send out the slides after this, so you'll be able to have that link. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie, the New York State Home Program Director, who's going to talk about our next funding round.
Great. Thank you, Courtney and Sarah. So we do have another poll question that Courtney's going to put up, and I have it listed as the wrong question, but as you'll see, it's asking if your organization, if you think based on this or other information that you guys might apply for home funds in the upcoming application round. So please answer that so we can get an idea of how much interest there is. And our application open date is Friday, July 14th, and the due date is Thursday, September 7th. And again, the activities being offered are the ones we went over today: housing rehabilitation, manufactured housing replacement, home buyer down payment assistance with or without rehab, and TBRA or tenant-based rental assistance. And again, a plug for a webinar that we are doing, which is application specific, on Thursday, July 27th at 10:30 a.m. And again, the registration link will be made available on the home site. We've also sent a blast email out with that link. You may have gotten that as well. That will go over the specifics of community development online, how to apply, how to register for it. If you haven't already, if you're brand new to this process, it will be a bit more detailed and specific to the application. So let's see what the results are. Nobody's answering the polls today, I see. So, but of those answered, it's kind of half and half. There's most likely and somewhat likely. So that's good to hear. Again, we welcome your applications, and the whole point of this is to kind of convey that the program is run differently than in the past. As Sarah kind of hit home, we do a bigger hands-on approach than in the past. And while this is a federally regulated program, that should not deter you or scare you off, because we're here to help you. The regulations are kind of like guardrails. You can look at them as, a challenge or a hurdle to success, or you can look at that as a kind of a roadmap to success, because it sets out the requirements of what you need to do. So with that, sorry, I'm switching between screens so I can see my notes. That basically wraps up today's presentation. Again, the slides will be made available after the presentation. Courtney, I'm not sure if we're emailing them to the attendees or if we're just posting them on our website, or both.
Yeah, we can do both.
Okay. And for those of you that have to jump off, please feel free to submit any follow-up questions to the home program mailbox listed on the slide. But for those of you that would like to stay with us, we'll see if Marge has any burning questions from the Q&A that couldn't be answered. And just remember that we can provide TA and answer questions through the application deadline. But after that round is closed, staff will be scoring applications and no longer be able to help address issues related to the request for applications. So for those of you jumping off, thank you so much. We welcome your applications, and hopefully be able to help you provide affordable housing opportunities to your community. I'm gonna pop open the Q&A because there was one I just wanted to add to that Marjorie answered already. Just to clarify to Emily Essie's question, can LPAs combine activities in one contract? Marjorie's answer was no, which is correct. But just kind of to drill down on the specifics, you mentioned down payment, closing cost assistance, and rehab. If you're providing those separately, then they have to be separate contracts, separate applications. But there is an option to provide down payment and closing cost assistance with a small amount of rehab that Courtney went over in the slides as well. So that should clarify it.
Yeah, there were a few questions that I wasn't able to answer, so I'll bring it to the panelists if that's okay.
Sure.
So from Antonia, we have, does the house need to be brought to code for everything in the home or just the items we're planning to work on? For example, if a home needs a new roof, do we have to look for code issues inside the house as well?
So yes, Antonia, home regulations require that the whole unit be brought up to code. So you have to look at it as a whole. You can't just focus on one item or another. And anything Courtney or Sarah want to add, please feel free to jump in.
Also, just some questions, again, these questions that are highlighted are ones that I think that the whole group would benefit from too. Can you extrapolate on the 5% admin costs and how it would work for agencies which use an IDC rate? I believe that's referring to indirect cost.
Yes, and the budget policy is on our website, which you guys should have, which is also in the PowerPoint. But specific to indirect costs, if, as long as an agency has an indirect cost allocation plan approved by a cognizant federal agency, they can use that negotiated rate to bill for admin. Otherwise, they have to use the 10% de minimis indirect rate, as well as the other options of billing, like, for example, staff costs related to processing, the units, or general management and oversight coordination of the program. So hopefully that will answer it. If you have specifics, we weren't going to get that specific today, so you can send those to the home email box, but that's the general answer to that question.
Yeah, and we'll try to get through a couple more questions have come in. We'll try to get to what we can, and what we can't, we will respond via email. Can an application be submitted for rehab funds that may have completed pre-development activities already, environmental remediation activities, for example?
Theo, I think you also, or no, that was another question. Can an application be submitted for rehab funds that may have completed pre-development activities already? I mean, there's nothing against that. Generally speaking, yes, I'd need to get more specifics, but my only thought is home also undergoes environmental review, so I don't know if there'd be any
Choice limiting actions.
Thank you. Choice limiting actions. Assuming that they are not, if you guys have done pre-development activities already, you can come in for rehab funds. But keep in mind, this is single family homes, not, development projects per se. There was one question I wanted to go back to as well. Hold on one second. Oh, as far as new construction funds, I also wanted to throw out there the option of AHC provides funds for new construction as well, the Affordable Housing Corporation. And then I'm assuming that question was related to single family homes. There's also new construction offered through finance and development for generally for rental projects.
Do you want me to keep going through the questions?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Can you clarify the difference between project delivery and admin costs?
Again, I would refer you to the budget policy online, but basically project delivery is specific to a project. So those are costs incurred that you pay to maybe hire staff or consultants or services to assist in a delivery of a specific unit. And admin is incurred by your program overall, like general administration or oversight, and it's not tied directly to a particular unit. That's the simplified explanation.
Okay, we have another question from Marie. I'm sorry if I missed this info in the beginning, but is there a match requirement?
Not at this time. There may be down the line, but home, yes, requires match generally, but we meet that through other state funding sources. So when you apply for a program, you do not have to provide match right now.
And from Miriam, I have, if an organization also receives funding from HDR, what are some items we should consider before applying for a different one? For example, neighborhood preservation program.
I mean, in general, off the top of my head, you should probably request a meeting if you have specific questions, or email us with specifics. But I mean, really nothing. There's nothing from stopping you other than considering your capacity. So we take a look at the capacity and your ability to run the program, how much funding you already have in hand, how far along are you successful with that? Have you had problems with that funding, those are things we take into consideration if you apply to the home program. But in general, there's nothing prohibiting you from applying. May have missed it. I'm reading them now. Hi, Sue.
Okay, go ahead.
I may have missed this, but can 2 to 4 unit properties be assisted with home? So generally speaking, it's only 1 unit. If you want to provide assistance to rental units, you have to get special approval. The reason being is that all of those large rental requirements that apply to like the large family, multifamily development side also apply to single family. So for example, someone needs to follow up with compliance for that rental unit. So if I own a house and rent it to Sarah, I have to make sure for 15 years that Sarah is within income level under 80% AMI. Someone has to inspect the unit for HQS. So all of the big rental requirements apply, and we have found that a lot of times, Mr. Smith that owns the 2-family really does not want to comply with those long-term rental requirements. I'm going to keep going since we still have 115 people on. I believe home regs require all code violations must be addressed. What if you have a home that requires more than $65,000 worth of renovations in order to address all the code violations? So you would request a waiver to go above our internal imposed limit, and that would be okay to do.
So just jumping in on that one, like leveraging funds from another program would also be a option.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I kind of fumbled over that 2 to 4 unit property assisted question. So if anyone wants to add to that, or Sue, if that made no sense, please say so and I will re-explain it. Hi, Reg. Can down payment assistance work with the state MMHR as a match for a newly built unit? I don't understand that question because this New York State manufactured home replacement program is manufactured home replacement. It's not really considered a newly built unit. And so basically, no, the two cannot be combined. Down payment assistance is for the purchase of, and I think that's in our admin plan. If you read in the front, it will explain that it's for the purchase of a pre-existing unit, really not for manufactured home replacement. Because anyway, that I don't really understand how that would work. So I would need more on that question. Because if we're paying for the replacement of a unit, why would they need down payment assistance? Oh, I see what you're saying. Maybe to put in the remaining funds. So no, you would need a home manufactured home replacement in order to combine that with the state MMHR. Alfred from the New York City area, have not heard from him in a long time. Can rehab include the addition of solar? I really don't know. I don't see why not, but I don't know that would really be considered. I mean, we just want to make the home livable and repaired. If it's addition and not needed and looked at as an extra, then no. Really, we just look to meet code requirements. So I don't want to rule it out, but probably not. It sounds like that would be an extra and not just used to make a decent, affordable home. My community is in dire need of rehab for 60% of our housing stock, which is owner occupied in most cases. Would this program help with rehab? So I think by seeing this and maybe rereading this webinar, yes, I mean, that's the whole point. But you need to meet certain requirements. I am a new 501c3 in the community hoping to serve immigrant women and get safe housing. Can I apply for this? Or is it only for organizations who have been awarded this grant before? No, I mean, you're welcome to apply, but you need to meet all of the requirements, which will be laid out in the RFP. So you would need to read through all of that and make sure you meet all of the requirements. Do home program funds limit exterior upgrades to the bare minimum to improve the exterior, like single color siding, or are reasonable expenses to maintain the historical value or appearance allowed? Ooh, that's a good question. Like fish scale siding. I mean, unless it's a SHPO requirement, I would say you could make a case for why it's required, but again, we generally don't look for anything that's considered an upgrade or an extra. So I don't usually see like the fish scale siding on the roof peaks and all of that. It's just general rehab. Is the service area limited to the geographical location only or also need of targeted population coming into the service area seeking assistance? Is the service area limited to the geographical location only or to the need? So basically you can tell us in your application where you're intending to service, as long as you show in the application what the need is and what the targeted population is and the capacity to serve it. We don't limit the service area. Can nonprofits purchase and rehab rental units? So no, if you're looking to be the not-for-profit doing the purchasing and the rehab, no to that. And then generally that's like a different offering and we don't do a lot of rental units. A lot of reasoning is because of the answer I gave previously, that the rental requirements are a bit onerous for owner occupied units. Marge, did I miss anything?
No, you covered all the questions. And then unless there's any others, that's it.
Okay.
I think there was one question, and maybe we went over and I missed it. There was a question that said, can a CDBG and home entitlement city apply?
Yes. What, where was that? Yes, I did miss it.
Emma
Again,
Mirren?
Yes. So yes, as we went over, one of the points of this too is to make sure that other home participating jurisdictions know. There was kind of a misconception out there that you couldn't apply for home funds from the state if you already got your home allocation from HUD directly, and that's not true. You can combine both. It's just that we would hope and want to see that you're using your own home funds as leverage for whatever program you're applying for. And if you're not, at least give us a reason why. Like say you're using all of your local home funds for, I don't know, Chodo homebuyer development, and it's all used up, and you really also need funds for homeowner rehab. You can say we're using up all of our funds. That's why we're not putting them towards this program. So we would just need a reasoning for that. That makes sense. So we're down to only 102 participants, but if you guys don't have any questions, please apply, send questions to the home email. Sarah, you wanted to?
I just saw there was one more question. Do we need a public hearing to apply?
And the answer to that is no, that is specific to CDBG. So again, thank you to Marjorie, Courtney, and Sarah for all of your work on this. This was great. I had a good time talking to all of you. Thanks for attending and hope to see you apply in July.